Welcome into the lounge presented by DraftKings. We have the pleasure of sitting down with running back Kenyan Drake. And Kenyan, let's start here. So you have this great game in New Orleans, and it seemed like that one was really a special one for you. You know, you scored 2 touchdowns, run for 93 yards, and then in the post-game locker room, we saw the video where Harbs is like, all right, who gets the game ball? Here we go. Got the wooden one here. Who gets the game ball? You know, and everybody's like, KD. Like, can you just talk about how special that moment was for you?
Yeah, it was very cool. Kind of like how I elaborated in the speech that I kind of had to make, which was definitely impromptu because I wasn't expecting to. But it was kind of cool being not necessarily the centerpiece of it because obviously it's a lot of hands on deck that kind of goes into my personal success as a running back. But just kind of embodying the Ravens style of football during that game and kind of how that fourth quarter kind of came. I had like 11 carries, I think, going into the fourth quarter, ended up with like 20 plus.
Right.
So doubled my amounts, you know, as the game went on. And I feel like that's what epitomizes me as a player, that epitomizes this team as a team in general, just kind of finishing and wearing down on you at the end of the game. So it was pretty cool to kind of be a part of that.
Right.
What's the moment like as a player coming to a new team where you're in a locker room like that, post-game victory, and everyone's kind of shouting you out? Like, I got to believe when you change teams, you got to learn players, you got to make friends, you got to like go through all that stuff, and then to be the person in the middle of that, what did that mean to you?
It was a special moment. It's funny. This, I guess, my second go round in terms of out of nowhere kind of switching teams, because when I got traded from Miami to Arizona, I played like 3 days later on Thursday Night Football and actually had a pretty good game, but we ended up losing. So it really, it's bittersweet in that situation, but kind of coming here and, obviously it took me a few weeks to kind of get used to the offense and, used to the style of play here, but to have, be on that type of stage, help this team win, in the facet that we did, which is hard-nosed football. Especially with how throughout my career, people may not see me as that type of back in terms of being able to get the tough yards, grinding out type of situation, which, I want to continue to prove throughout my career. But, I just it was pretty cool. And to be here, be a part of this team, I feel like it's one of the best teams I've been on since I've been in the league. So I'm excited about us continuing to move forward.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned kind of the perception of you as a runner. And I feel like when you catch balls out of the backfield as well as you do, you kind of get labeled as that, well, he's kind of like a pass catching, maybe he's a third down guy or whatever. And you've shown a lot more than that. You've run the ball for a lot over your career. But it is interesting because you mentioned that, the Ravens' physicality was part of the reason that you wanted to sign here. Can you talk about what that thought process was like?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a run-first organization, you know what I mean? Like, there are teams that, are in the league that they have the mantra of being a pass-first team.
Right.
Throughout the years, especially recently, this has been a run-first type of offense, you know what I mean?
Right.
So kind of coming here and being a part of it and understanding that it was going to be a lot of downhill, even like – just the schematic way of kind of how we do downhill may bounce, but you kind of have a lot of ways to be able to press a certain gap, get to another gap, kind of set up, the outside bounce, cut up the field type situation, which I was able to exhibit. And obviously with the help of the O-line in front of me, they've been doing a great job, week in and week out. So obviously credit to them and everybody that kind of gets that scheme together. But I just try to be as versatile as possible. I feel like my game can morph with whatever the situation is, and I want to continue to, be that type of guy that can be relied on in any type of situation as the season goes on.
Right.
You also delivered the quote of the week after the game in New Orleans where you said, what was it? The human will can only take so much.
Yeah.
Oh, that was good. That was good.
That was the quote of the week, no doubt, after that win. And it's interesting because I've always kind of wondered, like, you hear people talk about, well, we wear them down in the second half. And sometimes I'm like, is that true, or is that just what people say because you don't know really how to describe that success? I'll tell you what, against Tampa and then against New Orleans.
And Cleveland, too.
And it sure seemed like you guys just wore them down in the second half. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because it just seems like that's what you're doing. Like, you're having the success in the second half of games because, like, you're wearing down defenses.
Yeah, and I keep wanting to give credit to, everybody else around me because, and obviously any running back in any situation will do that in that sense. But Like, I feel like we have the best front in football. And with that being said, we continue to get better as the game goes on. And you win games in the second half, specifically in the fourth quarter, especially those 4-minute drives. Now, personally, I would want to finish with the ball in my hands, and I'm pretty sure everybody on that offense would love to finish with the ball in our hands. We didn't get the job done against Tampa. Last week we also didn't, or Monday night, 2 weeks ago, I guess, we didn't get the job done as well. But obviously the dub is the most important thing. But just continuing to just pound the ball, and even those situations where they may know what is coming because it's a very similar formation, very similar motion. But what can you do about it?
Can't stop
Especially
it.
when, everything is fit up right. They try to go over the top. I make, it may look like a certain thing because of like I said, I love the scheme here because it can hit in so many different ways, but it's the same play. So
Right.
the defense almost can't be right in that situation. They get frustrated and they try to kind of go out their gaps and, their techniques, and we just kind of, they can't be right.
Right. Interesting. I noticed that the jump cut that you had in this past game against the Saints, that fancy footwork is that's right there. Has that always been there? Are you adding some moves on the fly here?
You know what's funny? Me coming off my ankle injury, and I've had another ankle injury when I was in college. I feel like I've always had that explosiveness, I've always had that jump cut ability.
Yeah.
And I wasn't able to kind of exhibit it as this year has kind of
Right.
gone on because of, I was just hurt this past December. So it hasn't been a year yet. I'm still kind of trying to, honestly get my feet under me, especially those first few games.
Right.
It was just kind of almost like a mini preseason for me in a sense because I didn't get that many reps when I was in Vegas to kind of get that wear and tear or that rust, I
Right.
guess, in a sense.
Right.
So now that I'm in this offense and I have, a better ability or a better sense of where things are supposed to hit, a lot more patience when, I'm trying to not make them feel like, oh, they can get to this gap because they think I'm going to go this way, I'm going to go this way.
Right.
It just gives me the ability to, be more myself.
Right.
And honestly, when I made that move, I jumped outside. So fast forward or rewind.
Yeah.
The very first play of the game, very similar play. I bounced out wide, and Tyron Matthew was able to kind of like funnel me and make the tackle.
Right.
Same play. That play was I jumped out wide, but the tackle was in front of me, so I was able to use his leverage. Got back inside, and the linebacker kind of went over the top too, thinking I was going to go over the top. And once I put my foot in the ground and then jumped back, I was kind of like, oh, I made a miss. And it was kind of like I felt like I was really in the groove in that point, and
Right.
a lot of players kind of getting that feeling where you're like, all right, I feel real good and I feel like real free. And you
Right.
kind of just start doing stuff, and when it works, it works.
And that's kind of, I feel like, the measuring tape for a running back, right? It's like, well, do you get the yards that you're supposed to get? And then the next level of being a great running back is, do you get yards you're not supposed to get? Do you make people miss? Do you, break a tackle or whatnot? And do you feel like now you're kind of getting to that point coming off the ankle injury where it's like, all right, now I'm at that level?
Yeah, just confidence at the end of the day. Yeah, everybody in this league has ability. You wouldn't be here if you didn't have that ability
Right.
to separate yourself in general, because every step of the way you have to continue to prove yourself. But then once you get into this league and you see around the league, people are just going bananas because they have just crazy confidence. The coach has confidence in them to go in any situation to get the ball. They may be touching the ball early and often, and then that confidence in that specific game continues to get better. And then, guys just beat themselves, you know what I mean?
Right.
So you kind of talked about this when you first got here. You had to learn the offense, and it was a little slow going for you when you first arrived. Can you talk about the challenge of learning this offense? Because it does seem like it's a bit more complicated for a running back than a lot of other systems. You have to have the mesh point down with the quarterback. There's a lot of motion before the snap. There's guards pulling in every direction.
Greg Roman's scheme is
there's
kind
just
of
a lot
bananas.
happening, like before the snap, during the play, and like what was that? Was it more challenging to learn that? And can you just kind of share some insight on that process?
Yeah, for sure, because really the first couple games, I had, a little bit of success in the first game, like kind of as the game went on, I got more touches. And the second game just really didn't click at all, against the Dolphins, like for me personally, just for whatever the case was. But those 2 weeks where I was inactive and I was kind of sitting back and I was working on my craft in practice, even when I was getting scout team reps, it kind of gave me the ability to, one, continue to get healthy first and foremost, and then two, continue to just build camaraderie with the offensive line, no matter who it was, with how they were pulling or, how linebackers reacted to the way that I moved with certain plays and things like that. And then once I kind of got back in the game again, and then that stuff started to mesh, especially with, like you said, the schematics and, really knowing what to do in general, because I was just like, I wasn't moving with the confidence that I have now because I wasn't sure about where I should hit this or what the play call is to begin with in general, because I was only in the game for a week or here for a month and so. So as the year continued to get going, I continue to get more confidence. To keep getting more confidence in me, and then that just breeds success.
It's interesting. So I think some players could get kind of salty. You're inactive for a couple games. You're like, I signed here expecting I'm going to get all these touches, and now I'm inactive. Like, what's going on here? But you basically took the approach like, hold on, let me figure out like this offense and how I can really kind of like make myself fit into this and then take it to the next level.
Yeah,
which
sure.
You probably deserve a lot of credit for.
Yeah, I mean, nobody cares. You know what I mean? Like at the end of the day, like you have to take responsibility for what you do well and what you don't do well. And when you do something well, you give away the credit, and when you aren't doing well, you have to look within yourself and be like, all right, what can I do better? And that's what my mantra has been my whole career. Even when I was in high school, Bama, like earlier in my career in general, when I had success, it's always been about, all right, self-criticizing not overly criticizing myself, but looking at what can I do better. And then when I do something good, all right, of course, like continue to stay on top of that, but then also be like, all right, what around me is helping me get to that point? Because I don't never like to bring the spotlight to myself, because I can't do it by myself. You know what I mean? So I'm just really in a very confident and happy spot, and continue to put the work in from the classroom standpoint. We continue to put new plays in week and week out. It's a season within every week, especially in this league. So I'm just excited to continue to move forward.
So you mentioned your ankle injury. You had a broken ankle last December, and it's kind of crazy that people don't, I think, realize that like all of our running backs are coming off of season-ending injuries. I mean, you, JK, Gus, and Justice. I mean, what kind of bond has that formed in that room?
One, we're already a tight-knit group, and then with that type of I guess situation where we can kind of relate to each other from that perspective, it just gives you a better idea of how tough this position is, because I'm just going to kind of step back from the question a little bit and be like, I don't feel like running backs get enough credit in this league with the things that we're asked to do. Run the ball obviously as a back, block as a tight end or a lineman would do, and then also be able to catch the ball and be a versatile playmaker out the backfield like a receiver. So I feel like, especially in this offense, I'm excited about everybody that's in this room. We don't really have an ego. People just want to kind of go out there, and when our number's called, we make plays, regardless if it is in any facet of what I mentioned, or blocking, for 8, because obviously he's the ultimate playmaker in this offense. So you can't, forget about his impact and how it also opens up the offense for us as well. So, we all just kind of take it in stride, understand that we all going to have our good days and bad days, especially coming off injury and having the workload that we sometimes do have week in and week out. It was my game last week. Gus is coming back, excited to him to continue to build his season up, and JK is coming back, excited about him being able to come back and do his thing. And we just got so many weapons, man.
There's been a lot of like 3-headed monster running back groups in Baltimore, but I don't know if we've ever had a 4-headed monster. And then you count in Lamar, like you said, that's a 5-headed monster. So I did a little Googling, right? Because we need to come up with a nickname for this group, right? So I did some Googling, and I came up with this Greek-Roman mythology thing called a Hydra, right?
I figured you was going that way.
So it has a bunch of heads, and when you chop off one of the heads, 2 more grow back.
Ooh, all right.
What do you think?
Yeah,
Hydra?
And that's Tyler Beatty and Mike Davis.
Exactly.
So
I kind of think Hydra for this running back group might stick.
No, I like it. I mean, but at the same time, though, isn't Hydra like the bad guys that's in the Marvel movies too?
Is it? I don't know. I'm not a Marvel guy.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Producer, yes. Oh,
so
no.
It's like,
but bad in a good way? Like bad. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, bad. Yeah, I agree. If we just stick it straight to, I guess, Greek mythology and like be like, hey guys, it's not the Marvel bad guy
Right,
characters.
yeah.
You know what I mean? Then
Right.
we can kind of
Okay.
ride with that. I like it.
We'll roll with that.
I like
I
it.
don't know how I follow that one up, but I'll do my best here. So you played, Alabama. You win a national championship there. You had one of the iconic plays in that national championship game, kickoff return against Clemson 2016. And when you were at Alabama, in that backfield, there was T.J. Yeldon, Eddie Lacy, Derrick Henry, right? These were all guys who were there at the same time. A lot of talent in that backfield. But also, like, some of those guys, when you're playing with Derrick Henry, you kind of get overshadowed a little bit because he wins the Heisman Trophy and all that. So, obviously, you're a guy that wants to win, but was there also a part of you that was like, I want to show, my ability? And what was it like being in that backfield?
Kind of very similar to what we have here. And this is just kind of a 1 year situation. There was, 4 years of, people just continue to come in because we had Bo Scarborough come in my senior year, Damian Harris, who's obviously starting doing his thing in New England.
Right.
So we had a multitude of guys, in that backfield.
That's how it works at Alabama, right?
You know what I mean? It's not, it was never like, it was always just reload. You know what I mean?
Right.
So with that being said, though, I don't think really any of us at that same time had egos. Well, I know I didn't. I can only speak for myself. But, as a group, those are all still my guys. I still talk to them on a daily basis, a weekly basis. And it's just, I don't know, me specifically, I know when my number's called, I'm going to make plays. Whether it was kick return, like you mentioned, in a championship game. I don't know. I value myself as a playmaker. So regardless of if I have the ball in my hands, if I'm not on the field, whatever the case may be, I'm going to do everything I can for when my number's called, or whether I'm in the game, like specifically to get the ball or not. I'm going to draw people away from, everybody else. I'm just going to be I'm going to be a football player. I'm going to be me. And that's all I can be. And, that's when I kind of brought my game to this point, because full circle moment, being at Bama, being in that situation, not getting a lot of carries prepared me for coming into the league and not getting carries, right on. And then 2017, they traded Jay Ajayi, and Damian Williams in front of me got hurt. And then I led the league in rushing like the last month with like 500 yards at that time. And then they bring Frank Gore in the next year. Now I'm relegated back to I don't want to say relegated. I was brought back to a third down back situation. So then that year, I still had 1,000 yards total with like 8 touchdowns or something. The next year, I get traded to Arizona. Then I'm put into a first and second down back situation with me and Chase Edmonds.
You were like the guy, right?
Right, exactly. So that's 19 to 2020. Then 2021, now I'm back to, second string, third down back type of situation, catch the ball at backfield behind Josh. And now here, I'm kind of like all three combined.
Which that was weird because, the Raiders signed you to a pretty lucrative 2-year deal. You know what I mean? And then to not make you the guy, that was just kind of weird.
Yeah,
especially
Josh,
you were coming off almost 1,000 yards
the year
in
before.
Arizona.
Right. Well, 1,000 yards total. I think 3 straight years from 18, 19, and 20.
Well, yeah, just rushing you. What was 955 yards or something like that
right,
in
exactly.
Arizona?
And that's still a sore spot in my side. I was able to get 1,000 yards, but it is what
We'll
it
just
is.
go with total yards.
Yeah, totally.
But every organization, every regime has what they feel like is how they want to move with a player. They kind of some team just see us as chess pieces. They want to just fit into a certain scheme, and you have a certain body type, so you can only do this, and I can only control what I can control, and that's what I've kind of lived through my entire life in general.
Right.
So coming here and just getting a fresh start. Obviously, it didn't really go according to plan off the jump, but what does? You just kind of take your lumps, you grow, you learn from it, and then continue to get better and put a smile on your face while doing it. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, I remember when you first came here, I had a conversation with you, and I found it to be really interesting because you said, for the first time in your football life, you kind of felt the rejection, after the Raiders released you a year into a 2-year deal. How did you deal with that and kind of handle it the way that you have?
As natural as possible. Of course, it stung. I actually kind of had idea that it was coming because as ironic as it was, the last preseason game I played there was against Miami, and they brought all the young guys that they were still trying to evaluate, and they left all the guys that they felt like, were going to make the team or whatever, or they wanted to protect in a sense. So I was still in evaluation mode. So, year 7, running back, coming off an injury in evaluation mode, that doesn't really bode well. I've been around the league for a little bit. I kind of understand that situation to write on the wall in a sense. So I was definitely a little sad because I bought a house out there. Felt like, I had a good, repertoire with the team in general, like players, coaches or whatever. And, they did me justice in terms of releasing me a week early and allowing, teams to know that I was on the radar instead of like, waiting until the last preseason game.
When rosters are set.
Right, exactly. You know what I mean? So it's all respect and love regardless. But, I felt like how I carried myself on and off the field prepared me to be put in this situation to, feel rejection again by, being placed inactive for the first time in my career for 2 games as well. But you got to take it in stride, man. It's a business at the end of the day. It's nothing personal. I know what I have the capabilities of doing, helping a team win, and, I'm going to continue to do that through the rest of my career.
The last one for me, it's, I think in hearing about your mindset, I think that's one of the reasons that you're having the success you are here, to be able to, when your number's called, you were ready for that opportunity. Obviously, the running back group is also getting stronger too. Gus is going to come back, and J.K. is hopefully going to come back, and it's just going to become an even more, it's going to be that 5-headed monster.
J.K.'s coming back. Don't be saying hopefully. J.K.'s coming back.
But there's that 5-headed monster, the Hydra that you talked about. What are your expectations going the rest of the year? This is a running game that it can be the best in the league, and you guys have a really dominant group. What are your expectations with this group, and as you see it playing out?
It's funny that you asked that question because we had a group bonding or team bonding type of day on Tuesday or Monday, and we played this game where we had paper. Like blank sheets of paper and a little ping pong ball. And it was probably 20 people in each group. And the option of the game was to make the ping pong ball while you have the piece of paper in everybody's individual hand. It had to not stop rolling, but also be in each person's hand, and the person that the ball rolled into, they couldn't move. So as soon as it rolled into, you couldn't move, but then you could kind of funnel behind and allow the ball to eventually land into the cup that was 20 yards down the field.
Okay, so you're making a ramp, in
a sense, right? But the ball could not stop, and it took us 15 minutes, 20 minutes to kind of figure out how to do it. Everybody had their hand in it. Let's suggest this, suggest that. And at the end of the day, we was able to get it. We were the first team to do it too. Just to let you know. Just to let you know.
You won.
But it kind of was a thing where you see the goal, right? The end goal is there. It's, you put your goal down. This is what you want to do. But you can't reach that end goal without the process in between. And that's kind of what I learned from that game, was that you can always put your end goal down. Of course, our end goal is to win the Super Bowl. Of course, you know what I mean? That's everybody's end goal. But the process in between, the everyday struggle, wins, losses, in between that is what builds you up to get to that moment. So that's what I'm going to continue to do, and that's what I know everybody, and especially in our room, is going to continue to do, is develop that process, enjoy the ups and the downs, whatever the case may be. But the end goal is always going to be the same. And that's what's going to eventually get us to that end goal, is the things in between that process.
That's awesome.
That's pretty great.
That's a good note to end on right there. Yeah. And you guys were the first team to do it, so I think that bodes well for that Super Bowl.
Exactly.
Well, the last time I had a ping pong ball and cups in a game, we're playing beer pong.
Yeah, exactly. That's
way better.
A different game.
Different type of game.
Well, Kenyon, thanks so much, man. This is a pleasure.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yes,
Yeah.
All right, well, great stuff from Kenyan Drake. There's 2 things that we didn't get to that I kind of wanted to. One being this little known fact that maybe you didn't even remember, is that in 2018, Kenyan Drake, you remember that crazy play? It was the Dolphins and the Patriots, the last play of the game. The Dolphins were trailing, and they had 2 laterals, maybe 3 laterals, and they scored a 60-some yard touchdown as time went down to beat the Patriots. Kenyan Drake was the guy that scored that.
Right place, right time.
Exactly.
Make something happen.
The Miami Miracles. Kenyon's got some miracles in him. We had the Mile High Miracle. He's got he's got miracles happening.
I like that.
Down the road.
I want a guy on my team who has miracles.
I want a miracle worker.
Yes.
On my team.
Yes.
And second thing is that Kenyan Drake and Drake, the singer/rapper, are friends. Did you know that? Drake and Drake.
Are they actually friends?
On social media, they are. So that's a yes.
They follow each other?
Yes.
All right.
And Drake doesn't just follow everybody. He follows Kenyan Drake.
All right, there we go.
So kind of cool.
Maybe we can get Drake in for a concert.
I heard there's a new album. He released a new album.
He did.
What's it called? Do you know?
I'm not sure what it's called.
What's it called, guys? Her loss.
So
their loss for the Raiders. Who cut Kenyan Drake? Boo! Full circle.
Full circle.
Full circle.
Full circle.
Their loss. The new Kenyan Drake album.
Well done.
Dropping this fall.
Well done. So, what did you take away from the conversation with him?
I thought he's just got a great attitude. Like he's just, he's fit in really well here. In what is a crowded offense and a crowded running backs room, with all these guys who are hungry to come back and show what they've got. And he's kind of fit in and he's playing really well. I think he's averaging 4.7 yards a carry, which is like right up there with some of his career high years. And he's just playing good ball,
Yeah, the thing that stands out to me, and he shared some good perspective on it, was just like it took him a little while to figure it out. Like with this offense, just because there's so much happening for a running back. And I feel like you don't often think about that, especially for a running back. You're like, all right, just, get
take
the ball,
hand off and let's
take
go.
the hand off and run to the end zone. And like, there's just so much that goes on in this offense. And I think that's probably part of the reason that he was a little slow out of the gate. And then also add in the fact that he was still working his way back to full health.
Right.
And like, he is one of the players, and I think there's a bunch of guys that are kind of in this mold, and this team is as a whole ascending. Like Kenyan Drake seems to me to be a guy that's on the rise.
Well, and so is Gus now that coming back off his injury.
So is Ronnie Stanley.
Right.
And you could go to a bunch of different guys on the line.
Well, and if JK is kind of the back that he expects to be coming off of that second surgery now, the kind of cleanup surgery, that makes a big difference, right? So, yeah, this running game, I think, is just only going to continue to be the core of the Ravens offense. I mean, they've always been a run-heavy team, but I think they're getting even more back to that in light of the Bateman injury, in light of all these running backs that they have and how the offensive line that they've built and the cohesion there. I think this team down the stretch, we're going to see them continue to run the ball a lot, and that doesn't mean you abandon the pass. You can't do that, but that's going to be the bread and butter of this offense. And what's really interesting is I just saw a video earlier today about how league-wide this is becoming the trend, right? I think it's yards per completion, or maybe it's yards per attempt in the NFL is the lowest that it's been in decades. Yards per carry is the highest in NFL history, league-wide, right? So, offenses are starting to shift to be a more run-heavy, run-focused approach, whereas the Ravens have been doing this for years now, right?
Well,
they were kind of ahead of the curve and defenses were more these pass-rushing defensive tackles, not these big block eaters, space eater guys, kind of. And so as defenses have evolved to defend the pass game, now they're more susceptible to the running game, and I think that's what we're seeing league-wide with the Ravens. Really, with the most unique player in the NFL, and Lamar Jackson leading the way, are the kind of the poster boy for that.
Well, it's kind of like, going back to 2019 when John Harbaugh said before the season that the offense is going to be revolutionary.
Exactly.
And then some people kind of scoffed and, said, well, is it really going to be revolutionary? And
it was.
It kind of has been.
Exactly. And now the rest of the league is trying to kind of catch up to that a little bit. They're like, you know what? The Ravens might be on to something here. Yeah. And now they don't all have running quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson, guys who can run the ball like that. But they're trying their own versions, of kind of going a little bit more towards the run. It's interesting to see that play out, and Kenyan Drake is obviously a huge part of that.
And in order to do that, you need to have a good backfield and multiple guys. There's not many teams. Totally. There's a handful. The Giants are one of the few that basically
Titans,
say Derrick Henry with the Titans and say all right, our guy's going to get 30 carries, 25 carries. Most teams don't do that.
Exactly.
And the Ravens have a full stable, and the stable's getting even healthier.
Well, think about where they were last year, right? They had all these running back injuries, and the guys that they had to bring in last year were just, now compare that to Kenyan Drake, right? Who's, I think, 28 years old, right? Different stage of his career, different amount of juice that's left. You see the difference in that kind of mid-season addition or right before the season. The difference that has made when you compare it to last year, especially.
Totally. All right, so we do want to look ahead a little bit to Sunday's game against the Panthers, but before we do that, we also want to give a shout-out to our friends at DraftKings, because as listeners know, the sports landscape is always changing. This week is no different. DraftKings is the leader in daily fantasy sports, and it has contest running for those who are looking to have skin in the game. It's simple. Every player has a salary associated with drafting them. You assemble a lineup of players. You try to stay under the salary cap, and then you sit back and you watch your points pile up. So now you know how to play. Download the DraftKings app today. Sign up using code FLOCK. New users get a free entry with their first deposit. Again, the code is FLOCK at DraftKings. Also, did you know that the Veteran Tickets Foundation provides free event tickets to our members of the military, our veterans, our first responders, and their families as a way to thank them for all their service and sacrifice? VetTix is a nonprofit organization that has distributed over 14 million event tickets throughout the country. Now, these tickets help reduce stress, strengthen family bonds, and build lifelong memories and encourage service members, veterans, and first responders to stay engaged with their local communities and American life. So you can help us support them by donating your unused event tickets of any kind to VetTix. To learn more about how you can do that, become a member of it, or support VetTix, please go to vettix.org. And as listeners may or may not know, this week's game is our Salute to Service game. So very fitting to give a shout out to VetTix ahead of that game.
For sure. And people probably remember the soup draft.
We're going to get to that.
Right. So we want to remind you that the Baltimore Ravens and Campbell's Chunky are teaming up to send a member of the flock and a guest to the NFL Pro Bowl. For the remainder of the season, the Baltimore Ravens will highlight 6 Ravens players who exude the do-it-all player mentality on and off the field. Visit BaltimoreRavens.com/Campbells to cast your vote today. So speaking of, you want to be Vanna White here?
We got 2. Here you go.
Hey!
This is the Campbell's Chunky Old Bay seasoned clam chowder. Okay, it looks great. You hold it up for the audience there. If you're watching the video version of the lounge, you can see the Campbell's Chunky. If you're not watching the video version, you can watch it on our app, our website, our YouTube channel.
Yeah, there you go.
So
you want to see the modeling that we just did?
Yeah. If you want to see the can of soup,
if you're listening right now, you got to see that.
You need to see the can of soup. Words can't describe it. So during our bye-week episode, we did a soup draft. So we had a whole bunch of different soups. We teamed up with our friends from Campbell's, and the results are in, and it's a mix.
No, it's not. Okay, it's a mix, but it's a one-sided mix.
It's a mix.
It's not a complete shutout, but it's a blowout. It's not a shutout, but it's a blowout.
It's the jury is very much undecided.
No.
Split jury.
No, all right, let's just jump into it here. This one comes from Brian Slagle. He says, I think Mink did something pretty clever on the soup draft. Might not have known it. One secret that Marylanders have but never vocalized is that Maryland crab soup is awful. they throw that on menus just to see which suckers they can get to eat that awfulness. Well played, Mink. Well played. Yep. So I you know what the other part about that is? Good summer soup. Okay, Maryland crab soup, you can eat it in the summer. Fine. You're eating crabs, whatever, you want to have a little app, fine. It works. But the parameters that we set was a cold fall day.
Oh, that's a great day.
And that is not a good day for Maryland crab soup. So just another point to strengthen my case with that.
Here's an email from Jeff Hewitt who writes, Mink fumbles again.
Wait, we're going bounce. Okay, get your 2 emails in support out of the way. We can't read all these
emails. We got a million emails.
Go ahead.
So we're not going to read all of them. But a great one from Jeff who says, Mink fumbles again in the soup draft. Mink had the first pick. How do you not take a tried and true staple like chicken noodle soup? Mink has proved to be incompetent, and he really does not deserve to draft again. It's time to bring in Cliff for a real challenge. I agree, Jeff. I totally agree.
Another point about the chicken noodle soup, right? And somebody else pointed this out in support of you, and they were like, "Oh, it's so good when you're sick." Yeah, but that's not the parameters. Once again, we went into this assuming full health.
We never said full health.
Chicken noodle.
We never said full health.
Assumption. We never said that you were sick. Chicken noodle soup, fine. It's good if you have a cold, but this was full health. You're 100% crisp fall day.
We never assumed full health, so that's where things kind of got off the rails.
No, I knew I should have. You have to get the fine print with you. All right, this one comes from Chris George. Says, what was Garrett doing? Awful draft picks from start to finish. Chicken noodle isn't bad, but never a first rounder. Vegetable, chicken tortilla, split pea. That was a walk in the park for Mink. Here's Carl Neff. Been listening to you both for a while, and I got to say, Garrett must have swallowed some crab shell because he choked on his draft. Yep. Okay, he just continues here. Carlton Farmer, I'm sorry to say, but Mink crushed you this time, Downing. Only excuse that you can have is that you must still be getting used to that new dad exhaustion. Congrats, by the way. Ryan finally won a draft. I can't remember the last time he did. That's fair. Jesse Niederberger, wow, Garrett's performance in this draft was almost as bad as Mink's summer draft. Oh, my. It just keeps getting worse.
No, here we go. Nick Rue, the closer draft than Mink realizes. And here's the thing. You went heavy with the cream soups.
But I had
and
tomato.
Nick says,
That's not
Mink
cream.
had a better roster and more talent. However, Garrett had a more balanced team with more variety.
No.
Mink may have botched himself by picking 4 cream-based soups. So
Yeah, but what's the next sentence? Still, I'm gonna give Mink the dubs because clam chowder and tomato soup are such a talented duo. It's hard to argue with. Yeah, you were gonna leave that part off. I knew you were. Anyway, there's a lot more of just people saying I dominated you.
So
Crushed ya.
if you want to get in your final thoughts on the soup draft, you can email us at thelounge@ravens.nfl.net. Shout out to our friends at Campbell's, and we are sending out some of the Old Bay flavor clam chowder to listeners who sent in those emails.
Yep.
I'll concede this.
Concede the win. Just concede right now.
I will give you.
Be democratic.
I will give you the win for the first time ever in a draft. This is your first ever victory in a draft.
It's not my first ever. It's my first in a long time, but it's not my first ever.
I'm not going that far. This is first ever. This is first ever.
What,
this is
Christmas
a monumental.
cookie
No,
draft? I feel like I've had some other
No, you-
adequate performances where I eked out wins.
No, you've had your drafting strategy has been a debacle, but and so as a winner, you have to pop the top and start drinking your first overall pick.
I love Campbell's, but I'm not willing to drink lukewarm soup straight out of the can.
Right out of the can. All right, so that puts a bow on the soup draft. Just give us our thoughts. We want to give you our thoughts on Sunday's game against the Panthers. Ravens are big favorites. Baker Mayfield's going to be the quarterback for the Panthers. Obviously, a guy the Ravens know well.
Yep.
I mean, just at a fundamental level, this is a game the Ravens should win. Ravens are heavy favorites in this game.
Coming off a bye.
I think this is a game that, you see it every week in the NFL. You can't overlook anybody. Probably a lot of people watch Philly, Washington on Monday night. Okay, Philly, the best team in the league, and then Washington pulls off the upset.
Right.
You can't overlook anybody, but this is definitely a game that this is a take care of business game for the Ravens.
Yeah, it absolutely should be. I mean, the Panthers traded probably their best player in Christian McCaffrey. Now, Donta Foreman has stepped up well in their backfield, so you have to stop the run game. But, Baker Mayfield is also going to, I'm sure, come out. He's got a lot to prove, right? I mean, he went down with an injury and kind of was not playing that well before then with his, new team. He's got a lot to show, but yeah, I mean, the Ravens, I think, are a much more talented team at this point than the Panthers, who have already fired their head coach midseason. They're one of the worst teams in the league so far. But you just, like you said, you can get bit by anybody at any time, and the Ravens have to make sure coming off a bye they don't come out kind of flat and that they, bring the hammer.
Yeah.
And so I expect them to, once again, run the ball a lot. Hopefully Mark Andrews is back. Hopefully Gus Edwards is back. That'll make a big difference. And I think that this game really for the Ravens should be a springboard into the final stretch of the season. It's kind of like, all right, we're riding 3-game winning streak heading into the bye. Everybody's feeling great. Everybody's talking about how, the Ravens have the easiest schedule remaining. They're in great position. They're in first place in the AFC North. But you know what? All that can go down the toilet pretty fast if you don't come out and beat a Panthers team at home after the bye.
Yep.
So you got to take care of business.
Yep, totally. So thanks so much for listening. As always, you can email us at thelounge@ravens.nfl.net.
Get ready for people hated the Jazzy big win.
Yeah.
Hated it. Now,
For good reason.
It proved to be a winner.
It worked. But
That's
it was an ugly win. It was an ugly win.
Why we won. But I think it should be retired. So get ready for the post-bye win over the Panthers. Let's get it.